of 26203, Chapter 2611 GCA, relative to extending the business tax exemptions for child centers and group child care homes so as to continue to promote early childhood learning and development opportunities for modern child care facilities. We have also on the agenda Bill number 232-33, introduced by Senator Brant McCready, James Espadon, Anthony Atta, Frank Blas Jr., Tommy Morrison, Mary Torres, and Dennis Rodriguez Jr., an act to amend subsection 74108 of Chapter 74, Title 11, Guam Code annotated, relative to increasing the civil penalties for scrap metal businesses who fail to properly follow reporting requirements as per Guam law. We have Bill number 233-33, introduced also by Senator McCready, an act to amend subsection 74103 and 74104, and to add a new 74110 to Chapter 74, Title 11, Guam Code annotated, relative to establishing mandatory inspection and certification of all non-ferrous metal property prior to a transaction of sale at a scrap metal business. We have Bill number 248-33, introduced by Senator Mary Torres, an act to amend subsection 4107 of Article 1, Chapter 4, Title 4, Guam Code annotated, relative to maternity leave of public officers and employees. And we have the nomination of Mr. Elmore A. Cotton to the Guam Board of Equalization for a term of 4 years. I'd like to first take a moment to acknowledge the senators who are present with me for this hearing this morning. Thank you for joining me, colleagues. To my immediate right is the Vice Chair of the committee, Senator Mary Torres. To my immediate left is Senator Frank Uggan Jr. To his immediate left is Senator Narissa Underwood. To her immediate left, Senator Dennis Rodriguez Jr., followed by Senator Tony Atta and Senator Brant McCready. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me today. I'd like to just quickly amend the agenda. We do have some individuals who have come to testify for Bill 248-33 who are professionals in the medical community, and they have patients waiting. So we're going to go ahead and hear Bill 248-33 first. And then after hearing Bill 248-33, we'll proceed to the nomination of Mr. Cotton so that he can go about his business for the remainder of the day. And then we'll conduct the hearing in the order that I've read of the remaining bills on the agenda. So without any further delay, I'd like to go ahead and yield the floor to Senator Mary Torres for her opening statement on Bill 248-33.
Hafadein Sidus Maasi, Mr. Chairman. Bill number 248-33 is an act to amend Section 4107 of Article 1, Chapter 4, Title 4, Guam Code annotated, relative to maternity leave of public officers and employees. I want to discuss that the intent of this bill is to modernize Guam's family leave laws and to find a balance that benefits both families and government employees. Research shows that paid leave contributes not only to the health and welfare of mother and child, but also makes it more likely that women will return to the workforce after giving birth. Based on discussions that I've had earlier this week with our legislative legal counsel, I will be submitting some changes to this bill to ensure compliance with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And I'd like to, before we begin testimony, I'd like to highlight those changes that I intend to make to the bill now so that the public has an opportunity to comment on these changes. Right now in Guam, in the event of childbirth or adoption of a child under age 5, we provide our executive employees with 4 weeks of so-called maternity leave, and this is in Section 4107 of Title 4, Article 4. We also provide 4 weeks of so-called paternity leave in Section 4107.1 of the same code. My bill originally only addressed 4107, which was maternity leave, as stated. I also intend to address Section 4107.1, paternity leave, because I think it's important that when you address one, you address the other. It's related and necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redefine the law from its current division into maternity leave and paternity leave, and instead have it be so that Section 4107 becomes pregnancy-related maternity leave. My intent is to maintain the right to 4 weeks of paid administrative leave in the event of birth or adoption of a child. That will not change, regardless of the gender of the employees or the parent. This is important for bonding and building strong families. So the paternity leave, the parental leave is what we're going to call it now. It will be gender neutral, and it will be paid administrative leave. It applies to classified executive and agency employees occupying a permanent position. So now what we've done is we've gone from a distinct maternity, a distinct paternity, to a parental. In addition, to address my intent of the bill to provide adequate leave for mothers upon delivery, I'm going to be adding 2 extra weeks of leave for female employees who are recovering from the medical effects of pregnancy and childbirth. This leave I'll call pregnancy-related medical leave. It will also be paid administrative leave, and it applies to females in the classified executive agency occupying a permanent position who are recovering from pregnancy, childbirth, or medically related conditions of pregnancy or childbirth. Does everyone follow so far? Okay. This obviously now applies to a smaller group of employees than parental leave, but it is so important to the medical recovery of babies and mothers. These mothers will also be eligible to take the 4 weeks of parental leave. So it's a small class that you're giving this extra 2 weeks to. As in my original bill here today, my substituted bill will include some clarification based on my office's discussion with HR reps at Department of Administration on the processes and procedures for taking leave in conjunction with having a baby or adopting a child, or to include, there'll be notification requirements by the agencies of employee rights. There'll be notification requirements of the intent to use leave by the employee. My bill also addresses how to use the leave, how it impacts probationary status, and also clarification on what additional forms of leave may be used in conjunction with parental leave and or pregnancy-related medical leave. There's nothing about what we presently are provided under law that will change. All the leave allowances that are provided by law will remain the same. What essentially happens is we've now eliminated all concerns for potential discriminatory challenges under EEOC. And I know that as we were thinking about this post-introduction of the bill, we have many situations in our society now that perhaps were different from when it used to be mom and dad and baby. We now have same-sex couples who also adopt children. And so the need to address gender differences had to be smoothed over so there wasn't a potential to have discriminatory challenges when a male parent versus a female parent tried to apply for the same type of leave. So my substitute bill that I'm going to introduce is going to address that so that we now have one class of parental leave. And for those women that need that added time to physically recover, and secure their children and bond with them and do all the things that they need in that postpartum period, will be allowed 2 additional weeks under the medically related needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Torres. So for Bill 240-33, we do have 2 individuals who've signed up. Dr. Tom Shea, please join us, and Ms. Carla Haddock, please join us also. I know both of you are professionals in the medical field, so I want to make sure we get you in and get you out because, we have these medical needs in our community that require your immediate attention. So, Dr. Shea, at any time when you're ready.
Thank you, Senators, and thank you for allowing us to go first. And I apologize for the audience in the back. I know they're anxious to get their testimony in as well. But I promise you it's going to be really short. I know I said that before and it dragged on, but if I go over time, make sure you stop me. Members of the 33rd Guam Legislature, I want to thank you for allowing me to submit my real brief testimony on this. I've been on Guam for nearly 20 years, and I deliver about 8,000 or more babies, so that's a lot of moms, a lot of babies. So I see the pain that each mother goes through every time they get pregnant, and the strength that they go through, that they need during the postpartum period. And needless to say, labor is one of the most intensive, that's what they call labor. I mean, it's intensive. And but it is the most happiest moment in the lifetime of any generation you go through. I mean, without women, there'll be no humanity. Without women, there wouldn't be no life, period. So God's given them a beautiful anatomy that is able to give birth. So with that, I think, at least all of us can appreciate that. But let's not punish them because they have that gift to give life. So I think it's important that the recovery period for the mother, in my professional opinion, it has to be a minimum of 30 days. And 20 days is just not enough for this day and age. And 45 days for cesarean section. And, complicated deliveries, I'm glad Senator Torres has added the recovery period for complicated deliveries, because there are complicated deliveries. Not all pregnancy will go as normal and anticipated. So I'm sure that I don't need to go into details of each and every delivery and what complications there are. But ultimately, this carries over to the workplace. If you have a healthy mother, a healthy child, and a healthy recovery period, the workplace is going to be a healthier place to work. And that will increase, productivity. And for every employer, that's what you're looking for, is a healthy employee. Now, research also showed that paid leave increased the likelihood that the workers will return to work rather than quitting. And, women in the workforce has come a long way. I mean, they've broken the glass ceiling. Even in medicine, they've broken the glass ceiling. Back in the 50s and 60s, maybe a few medical students were women. Now, over half the class are women. So I think we need to retain them in the workforce. And even Gulf Guam. I think Gulf Guam, we have women that's a speaker is a woman now. So I think, and eventually maybe there'll be a woman governor. So I think it's important that we recognize women has been part of our workforce, and they're going to continue to be. And they may overtake men someday, if not already. So I think we need to address the needs for them. And being pregnant it's a tough decision. Some may argue that being pregnant is an elective thing. But certainly being pregnant is privilege. And there are women who can get pregnant. But when they do get pregnant, we shouldn't punish them by saying, okay, you can only have 20 days of leave. That's just inappropriate. So I think with that being said, I just want to submit my written testimony, which is very, very brief. But I totally support strongly this legislation, Bill 248. And the substituted version, if I could, I haven't read the entire substituted version, but I would just like to mention that paternity leave is also important. I think fathers being next to moms in recovery is important. But we also need to make sure there's no abuse of that. Because there are fathers who get women pregnant and they just leave and they don't come back and support the mother, and I've seen that happen. So you need to make sure that if there is a provision for paternity leave, that provision should not be abused, that they be there for the mom in recovery. So I don't know how you're going to address that, but that's something that you have to address. And it's being gender neutral, I think is a good thing. Adoptive parents are the same thing. Although adoptive parents may not have the opportunity that they had to go into the childbirth process, but certainly the bonding aspect of it may be a little bit more difficult because that's not their natural birth child. But then again, we also need to make sure that there's no abuse of the adoptive side too, making sure that they're there for their adoption. That said, I want to open up just a few minutes for questions if you have.
Questions from any of my colleagues? Senator Underwood?
Thank you for being here, Dr. Shea. So what really would be the ideal for a normal delivery recovery period where we would provide adequate, I know we're extending this, we were to provide adequate bonding between the mother and the child. I know that in Canada it's a year. They actually provide a year for mothers.
Well, just to give you an example, in Japan, for
and
example.
Parents, actually.
In Japan,
both.
yeah. I mean, perfect example, in Japan, for example, they keep mom in the hospital for a week. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do that is because they want to make sure the mom knows how to bathe the child, know how to respond, make sure they watch for postpartum blues and depression. In the United States, we keep mom for 24 hours. And I think that's kind of quick. Yeah. But we do it so because of insurance companies who say, hey, get them delivered and get them out of the door because of cost effectiveness. Mm-hmm. So that's a little unfair for the moms. But your question addresses what, if you really want my opinion, I say recovery will be 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months.
Sure.
You know, I think for the mom to properly heal, and emotional bonding is there 6 months. For men, I mean, I don't think dad need to be there for 6 months. I think in the initial 30 days, I think that's adequate for them to be there. Somebody's got to make sure that mom is okay. So I think paternity leave is a good thing for fathers. But I think your question, if I had my choice, I say 6 months. But be as it may, I know that there's a budgetary aspect of this as well. So I think 30 days at the very minimum is a reasonable thing to do. I know the military has gone to 12 weeks. And myself, being in the military, I delivered babies in the military. And I think that's a good move for the United States of America.
Weeks.
Yeah.
For the military.
For the military.
Okay.
And, you know, military has the challenges too. I mean, certainly you don't want to lose good people. And women has been entering the military very, very swiftly now, and they want to retain them. You don't want to lose a good worker just because they got pregnant.
Yeah.
And certainly you don't want a woman having an abortion just because they got pregnant and can't take off. So those are the things that you have to take into consideration. But I think normal childbirth, I think 30 days is good. Complications can occur if you have a bad vaginal tear. You know, I know men, we don't get the opportunity to experience that, but imagine you have a real bad hemorrhoids and they tear. It's very, very painful. And it's not something you can recover just with 20 days. So those things you have to take into consideration. Cesarean section is also something to consider as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Underwood. I'm sorry, Senator Torres, you have some questions for Dr. Shea also.
I just want to comment also on the 6 months. The law does provide that they can take up to 6 months, but it's a combination of leave. And actually, what my bill does too is it clarifies how that process is, what they have to exhaust first before the others. But Dr. Shea, you mentioned complications. What are the rates of complications in your practice on Island? Would you say it's high, low?
Well, for example, if you look at preterm birth, everybody think of pregnancy. Oh, you're going to give birth, and everything will be, you know, fine and dandy, and you're going to give birth at full term. But we fail to recognize that at least 10 to 15% of mothers deliver preterm. Preterm is giving birth before the 37th weeks, and often they'll give birth at 30 weeks, and the baby will end up in NICU, which is NICU, neonatal intensive care, and that can be very stressful for the parent and the entire family. So about 10 to 15% of those babies will be delivered preterm, and that's national rate. That's when it's just Guam, and I think Guam may be a little higher. There's also birth defects as well. That's come to consideration. I mean, you read in the newspaper about cardiac defects. The number one birth defect in the country is heart defect. 1 out of 100 pregnancies will, you know, nobody ever made a declaration recognizing February as a heart defect meant for babies. Maybe one of you should. It's a good thing to recognize, because on Guam we do have a majority of parents, 1 out of 100, get heart defects. So that's something good to recognize as well. And February is the month to do that. Cesarean sections, for example, national rate between 25 to 30%, which is about our rate here on Guam. For every pregnancy that goes through, or every 10 pregnancy, you see about 3 women that will undergo cesarean section. And that recovery period takes a little longer, usually at least 2 weeks minimum to engage. And, you know, when you talk about, I mentioned vaginal tears, I mentioned mobility is an issue for moms, and the mom still had to recover at the same time take care of the baby. It's a balancing act. The least they have to worry about is, man, am I going to have a job when I finish with all of this? And that, if you can take away that stress level, I think it helps them recover much, much better. And they don't have to worry about everything else. I think the workplace would be a much better place to work. The other thing too is blood loss. You don't recognize this, but when women go through birth, it's a bloody experience. You lose a lot of blood. And just from that blood loss itself will make you fatigued, tired, anemic, and you can deliver a normal pregnancy, but when you go home, you become anemic. And just to recover from the anemia is a strenuous process. And I think that's something that all of us need to recognize.
Thank you, Dr. Shea.
Any other questions from any of my colleagues? Senator Rodriguez.
I didn't mention twins. So there are twins on Guam as well. So I noticed that in the bill it says, if I read somewhere here, it says this is applied for only 1 pregnancy and 1 baby only. So there's no provision for twins, but twins do occur on Guam quite a bit. Last year I delivered 10 sets of twins, so that's quite a bit.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Dr. Shea. This is, of course, a piece of legislation that I support and it should be supported. But this only deals with public sector employees, right? So you're in the private sector. What's going on in the private sector, and how could we? I know it's going to be kind of tough to mandate private sector to look at mothers as mothers, not mothers of if you work in the government, Gov Guam, but you're a mother, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
What is your suggestion? What is the standard now in the private sector?
Well, the private sector itself, you regulate yourself. The government, has always been frowned upon in invading into the private sector and how they run their business. But certainly, so certain private sectors, for example, if they got a QC certificate, they're under Guam supported, legitimate supported with finances, I think they should be held to the same standards. Anything that Gov Guam has any to do with supporting a certain business, etc., I think they should be held to the government Guam standards. So as far as those that's not, I think they should have a policy in place where they provide maternity leave. And, depending on the business finances themselves, you certainly don't want them to go bankrupt. But I think business will recognize that providing adequate time for the moms to recover and get back to as healthy as possible, I think they'll find themselves in a better position and be more productive. And I think, again, that's a very challenging question that you've asked, and I certainly would take it one step at a time. But I think Gov Guam has the power to ensure that, hey, if you're going to have some Gov Guam incentives, certainly you should follow your rules.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. Thank you, Dr. Shea. You can go ahead and excuse yourself if you must go.
Yes.
Thank you.
I love to listen to Carla because she has how many kids,
You're more than welcome.
But I got to go. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Carla, please.
Good morning, Senators. I am Carla Haddock, and as a mother of 6 children, I believe that I should be a subject matter expert on childbirth and delivery. Childbirth is not glamorous at all. After having all my children, all normal standard deliveries without any pain medication, I can testify to that. Research shows that mothers' bodies do need time to heal. Sending them back to the workforce before the mother has had time to adjust may result in lower productivity and poorer health outcomes. And as Dr. Shea mentioned, blood loss. Can you imagine having to return to work in 20 days after you have not even stopped bleeding from childbirth? It's really hard on the body. Breastfeeding routines are not established until about the first month of life. And trust me, I know I breastfed all 6 of my children for at least 6 months of their life. And each child is different. Why I think, I'm an expert, I know how to breastfeed this child. When that child comes around, it takes at least a month for good breastfeeding routines. And no mother should be put in any situation where they have to choose between a career or a family. And some families, especially those that are not paid as much, I'm fortunate, I'm a nurse, so I have a higher salary than some people. But some families cannot plan and save enough money to be out on unpaid leave. And that's just the reality of the situation. Any bit of granted leave helps in the situation. Further, child care centers on Guam do not take children usually until around 3 months of age. So that makes another barrier and burden to going back to the workplace. I am full support of this bill because I think it sends a strong message that mothers are valued and wanted at their job. Paid leave is a win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carla. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Haddock? If none,
I have a comment.
Sure, Senator Torres.
I want to thank you for coming out here, and I also want to publicly acknowledge that you're my daughter, Carla Torres Haddock. And Carla, you were one of my inspirations for this bill, because I think that there are so many people that want to be contributing members of the community, that also want traditional lives in terms of having children, and the government really owes it to everybody to make sure that we have a whole set of employees, that people are good to go when they come back to work. But I also want to say that I'm very proud of you, and you make me proud to be your mother. And keep up the good work, and you're a good inspiration for all those mothers that just want to do a good job for their kids, nursing them, and also a good job for their kids by staying employed. So thank you for coming this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you. She's
Thanks,
gonna
Carla.
make me cry.
I know, right? I was going to tell her to stop. Thank you. Anyone else wishes to testify on Bill 248-33? If none, we'll go ahead and conclude the hearing on Bill 248-33. I will work with the author of the legislation so that we can incorporate the changes that she put on the record in our hearing this morning, as well as any of the recommendations from anyone else who testified or will be submitting any testimony. We may attempt to put this bill on the agenda for our February session, given the fact that we already have a lot of expectant mothers who would most likely benefit from this legislation. So if we can get testimony in over the next few days of the remaining week, that will be most appreciated by the committee, and we will work expeditiously with the author to try and have the bill ready for our February session. That being said, we'll go ahead and consider Bill 248-33 as having fulfilled its statutory requirements for public hearing, and we will move on to the nomination of Mr. Elmore Cotton to the Guam Board of Equalization for a term of 4 years. Mo, please. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Cotton. You've been nominated to serve on the Guam Board of Equalization, and the floor is yours to go ahead and to present any opening comments to the committee. It may be. You have to push the button for the. Is the light on there?
Okay,
There.
I'm on. I just had one question. I've been on the board over 8 years, maybe 10 years, not even sure. But I did have a question about liability. As you probably know, we haven't had a appraisal done in many, many years, and we finally had one done just recently, and there's a lot of complaints. So we've gone, the years that I've been with the board, it's been fairly easy because not much has changed, but now we have this huge change, lots of complaints, and I'm concerned about the liability as a personal liability. I'm assuming that being a member of the board that we're protected as with regard to personal liability on decisions that we make. Can someone answer that question?
Well, yeah, just to clarify, you would be indemnified acting in your role as an officer of the government, with the exception of any instances of fraud that you may commit in your capacity. But other than that, you should be indemnified. Also, too, I would just recommend that as a board member, if there's any questions that need legal clarification, immediately seek an answer from the Attorney General. Don't try to assume the meaning of the law if you guys are unsure about it. I do know that we've just recently moved forward the nomination of Ms. Cynthia Ekubi, Esquire, attorney, to also serve on the Board of Equalization, so you would also have her professional legal expertise to turn to. But yeah, you should be indemnified as a board member, with the exception of anything that you may do deliberately that would not be legal. But aside from that, did you have any other opening comments that you'd like to make?
No, I
with
don't
respect
have
to
any
your
comments to
nomination?
make.
So you have served on the Board of Equalization previously.
Yes.
My only question, Mr. Cotton, was just with respect to your ownership of Century 21 Commonwealth Realty.
Right.
Now, having served on the board before, that has not presented any real conflicts of interest.
No, we have not had even one case where and I would recuse myself in the event it ever came up, but I haven't had, that hasn't come up yet.
Okay. The one reason why I really would value your expertise on the board is, when we do these revaluations, they're done on a mass scale, and I would really like to have actually your expertise looking at these revaluations, because having your knowledge in the market on a real-time basis, you can actually spot check a lot of these things and say, hey, that area is not worth that much. It's actually worth far lower, and this poor individual is going to be paying a higher property tax rate because that assessment was much higher than it should have been. So with your statement that you'll recuse yourself in the event that there's any conflicts, I actually do like the idea of having your expertise on the board to be able to spot check those things.
Okay, just so it's understood that I'm not an appraiser.
Right.
And what we do when we do a comparative market analysis, we're looking for pricing as opposed to value. Appraiser will always make that clarification.
Right. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Cotton? No? I do appreciate you being willing to accept the nomination. You are right. The recent revaluation has created a lot of work for the
Yes.
board.
Right.
So I look forward to your contribution to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton.
All right.
We'll go ahead and conclude the hearing on the nomination of Mr. Cotton, and we'll proceed now to the agenda as we originally outlined. Unless my colleagues have any requests for exceptions? If none, then we'll go ahead and proceed to Bill 221-33. I'll go ahead and yield the floor to Senator Frank Uggan Jr. for his opening statements on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just so that I don't misrepresent the intent of this particular legislation, I hope you bear with me. I'll just go ahead and read the legislative findings and intent for purposes of those who are watching today. And it reads, Elizabeth Guam finds that the business privilege tax, BPT, under 11 GCA, Chapter 26, Articles 1 and 2, are responsible for approximately one-third of tax revenue to the general fund. Elizabeth Guam finds that the late Senator Speaker Vicente C. Ben Pangilinan introduced Public Law 30-230, changed the structure of the BPT for prime contractors and subcontractors from levying BPT on subcontractors and allowing primary contractors to deduct payments and set subcontractors from his gross income for his own BPT obligations to levying BPT on prime contractors and allowing subcontractors to deduct payments from said prime contractors from their gross incomes for their own BPT obligations, which simplifies tax enforcement. That's one of the reasons why, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ensure I read this, because it does get a little bit complicated. Ilicitura further finds that the requirement of the contractor's license number or the registration number for a professional engineer, architect, or land surveyor, or the certificate of authorization number for a business authorized to provide engineering, architecture, or land surveying services by the Guam Board of Registration for Professional Engineers, Architects, Land Surveyors, or the person paying a tax on the amount deducted by the person is problematic, because some prime contractors may only need a business license for the purpose of his business on Guam, thereby creating a class of double taxation not intended by Public Law 30-230. It is therefore the intent of Elias Saturn Guam to provide that such contractors may include the Guam business license number on their BPT return and avert unintended double taxation by amending subsection E of subsection 26202, Chapter 26, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated. And Mr. Chairman, this is a request that has been forwarded by several representatives from the contractors community, primarily in light of the record of decision being released on the military build-up, and it's certainly going to try to clarify some of the imposition of taxes being assessed to our contractors. And I certainly hope that Reverend Tax will be able to provide testimony subsequent to this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Uggan. We do have one individual who signed up for Bill 221-33. That's Mr. Phil Hagan. Phil, please join us.
Good morning, Senators.
On. You may begin at any time.
Thank you for having me. I just want to read off the letter that I submitted, just make it short and sweet. Hagen's Inc. is a locally owned and locally grown small business. For the past 20 years, we have invested in our company's infrastructure and employees, which has allowed us to grow to 26 employees who drive 20 company vehicles. We own the warehouse our office is located, and we own the land on which it sits. This success can be attributed to the subcontractor work we have been given on our island's military bases. For much of 2015, we were not paying GRT on the income we were receiving from our prime contractor, who works primarily on our military bases. You can imagine our surprise in October when we received a letter from Reverend Tax saying that now we owe GRT or 4% on all that income. Knowing that our prime contractor has been paying GRT, we could not accept that this income was being double taxed. The tax law, which is written now, states only a contractor's license will be accepted. This was interpreted by Reverend Tax that it had to be a Guam contractor's license only, and no other license will be accepted. Our prime contractor currently has a Guam business license number, and a GRT number. So for us, it was unacceptable that in mid-year they could just change their minds. Please note that demanding that we pay the GRT on this subcontractor income puts a strain on us. We are in our second year of a 5-year contract, and GRT was not included in our proposal cost because our prime contractor was the one to pay this GRT. Keeping the law the way it is, takes thousands of dollars out of our pockets every year and puts it into those off-island companies as an extra bonus. These companies are not rooted in Guam, and when the military money dries up, they will be the first ones to leave. I assure you that Hagen's Inc. and other locally owned small businesses will still be here taking care of the community outside the gate. Hagen's Inc., its owners and employees fully support Bill 221-33 and ask that you senators do the same. Keep in mind that support for this bill will help small businesses to reinvest back into their community and to their company. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I'm going through the bill, and there's one. There's really a very uncomplicated amendment here, and it's just adding. Do you have a copy there with you?
But yeah.
Yeah. It's just adding issued by the Guam Contractors License Board or the Guam Business License Number.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying that this language will be enough to satisfy that the issue that's concerning your subcontractor situation?
Yes, it wouldn't. Right now, it was up to interpretation because it just said contractor's license. Before we had their Alaska contractor's license accepted for half the year, and then I guess some personnel change in revenue tax, and someone decided to say that it should be a Guam contractor's license. So, if they have a business license and a business license number and a GRT number, I think that should be just fine.
Senator, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and that's an excellent question in terms of getting clarification. My understanding prior to the drafting of this legislation or during the course of the drafting of this legislation that this would be sufficient language to carry out the intent as it was previously intended in terms of Public Law 30-230. Now, and that's why I qualify my statement, Mr. Chairman, that I certainly hope that subsequent to this hearing that we will get something in writing from Revenue Tax, because really they're the ones that are enforcing the law.
Yes.
And if they continue to interpret it as they interpret it now, then it will affect our small businesses, and that's certainly the concern that we have.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Egan. Yeah, perhaps what we'll do, because we want to make sure that we're targeting this thing spot on, is for Bill 221, I'll probably call for a roundtable after we have this public hearing, so that we can make sure we bring the subcontractors in and Revenue Tax. We'll call them into the roundtable, and then we'll just make sure that everything is going to be fully understood, that the intent of 221 is being achieved. And if not, then we'll get the exact language from Revenue Tax in that roundtable, telling us exactly how to put that in there if this doesn't already cover it.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. So, Senator Egan, does that sound all right? So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and consider Bill 221 having been heard. Phil, you're the only one that came to testify. But we will schedule a roundtable, perhaps we're probably going to session next week, so at the earliest possible convenience for the committee.
Whenever you want, I'm available.
Thanks, Phil. Any questions? I'm sorry, any questions from my colleagues for Mr. Hagan? None? Okay. Thank you very much. We're now on Bill number 224-33, introduced by Senator Dennis Rodriguez. Now go ahead and yield the floor to him for his opening statements on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our colleagues and to those who are here in attendance. Mr. Chairman, this bill, basically what it does is extend the business privilege tax exemptions for child care centers and group child care homes. About 5 years ago, we had passed a measure that would have changed the way child care centers here operated, and it hasn't been done in 30 years before that. And so in order to be able to help the industry, help the community be able to carry out these changes, and the bottom line of improving the delivery of early childhood to our children, the legislature at that time passed a measure to give them a BPT exemption. And that exemption is nearing its first completion at the end of this year, November 2016. And in discussion with the providers, it was very important that we continue to provide this exemption to them as they move forward in improving the delivery of early childhood to our children. And so that's what we have here. The bill is fairly simple. It actually just extends the the date of 2016 till 2021. And so I'm looking forward to this bill also being reported out soon so that it can be put on the agenda so that we can move forward and our providers would know what their future would be. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. So for Bill 224-33, we do have a lot of people who signed up for the legislation, but we only have one individual who indicated they wanted to testify orally. Did everybody who signed up want to testify for the today on the bill, or what I'll do is I'll just go down the list, and if you are interested in testifying, please just join us here at the table. We have Mr. Joseph Soriano, Ms. Brianna Sablan, Ms. Janet Rosario, Ms. Zenaida Ubas, Cora Nicolas, Teresa Halliday, Sharon Bayot, Hiroko Maeda, Gerard Huffer, Brillantis Rosab, and Catherine Kwan. And if any of the individuals who I called are interested in testifying, please join us at the table this morning.
Yes, we got to get through.
We'll just go ahead and begin from right to left, I guess, and start that way. If you could just state your name into the microphone for the record and begin at any time.
Hi, my name is Joe Soriano. I'm the owner of Nenny Child Care Center in Manila. Basically, we opened our doors in the year 2000 or 1999. We had to go through so many obstacles to get the doors open to care for children. That's our passion. I've submitted a written testimony, but I don't know if you guys have received it already. Basically, when I looked at the whole numbers of child care facilities on the island based on an average cost, it cost us in 2011 about the tuition has been $455 in 2011. It went up to $479, and that on an average in 2011 is about $12 million in revenues from all centers. That's just a calculation based on the number of centers we have. I didn't actually go and interview all the centers. I just took what's in front of me. And in 2015, it was about 14 million in revenues or tuitions collected from parents or from subsidies. The other is, and this is the whole island that I'm looking at in terms of group care and licensed facilities. And an average is on your GRTs will be almost, in 2011, I think it spelled out about 500,000. I think the same numbers are the same for 2015 and going forward. It's between 500,000 to 600 million. I mean, 1,000, I'm sorry, not millions. So we're talking about, there's no major increase that it will be done, but there's also tax exempt individuals, and those are the nonprofit and so forth. So we're talking religious organizations or what have you. And for small businesses like ours, I'm a small business person. It's a burden to pay, every penny counts actually, and it's a burden to pay taxes. It's a reality for everybody. And with that, we feel that the biggest thing that I see from this whole thing is just your help. Think of it, second to my last paragraph is basically what I will sum it to be. This is a small investment for everybody from the government. It's an investment on early childhood education for our kids. We spoke of the births on Guam. We're here for them, to care for them for the next, afterbirth situation. Unfortunately, caring for a child from birth is a very sensitive and critical moment. So that's why centers accept 3 months and over at minimum. And it's very costly to handle a child. An average cost for a child on an island for an infant is from a daycare standpoint is between 600 to almost 1,000, and that's compra the U.S. costs, and it's probably even higher in some U.S. Cities. But the main aspect is think of it more of a socio-economic investment. What it's costing today, that investment that the government is putting out by, exempting us from paying GRTs, which is $500,000 a year, is a small investment for the future. Meaning, it's costing us a lot in terms of delinquencies and every social ills that we have. Think of that as we educate our young ones to be in the future to succeed in school and succeed in life is basically what we're after, and it's our passion. But the main issue is think of it more as a socio-economic investment or a social return on your investment, which is the exemption. That's all I have, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano.
Good morning, sirs, madams. My name is Gerard Huffer. I'm the owner and the director of Adventures in Learning Child Development Center. We've been in operation since 1995. Both my wife and I run the center. We're the directors and the assistant directors of the center. I am also the vice president of the Guam Early Child Cares Association. Cora is the president. I'm the vice president of the association. I would like to start out by thanking you for giving us this last 4 years of exemption. It has really improved our center. It has helped us to survive. On the testimony before, I said that it would help us survive instead of closing our doors to improve the standards. And it was implemented, the GRT exemption was implemented so that the standards could be improved, which were in the makings for over 30 years. They tried to get these standards up. And so we did. We did come to that agreement and compromise and everything that we went ahead, raised the standards, and we got exempted from GRT. And that has really helped. That has really helped us out, and we were able to survive. Although I was able to survive and some of my colleagues were able to survive, we lost quite a bit of centers on Guam. There has been quite a bit that has closed their doors. My count, and I'm thinking of it, I don't have the facts in front of me, but it's about one-third. About one-third, because I remember when we had about 60 daycare centers on Guam. Now we're down to about 40. That's about one-third of the centers that closed by raising the standards. With the new standards that lost, we've also had to face the wage increase. Those, and not just the minimum wage, because when you have your staff there and you raise the minimum wage, you also have to raise your other staff members that have been working with you for a while, you know. So that was a hit on us. We had the reduction of the ratio. Instead of 6-to-1 infants, and now it's 4-to-1 infants. So you have to watch 4 infants for one staff, and us being open for 11 hours or 12 hours, you cannot hire the staff for that long, so you have to hire 2 staff to cover that infant. We really haven't raised our rates. It's so difficult for our parents to pay these rates. It's hard for the parents to make these ends meet. And that GRT has really helped us out. It has really helped our parents, you know. We've also had to look at professional development. That's part of the standards that was raised up. All of our staff have to get professional development and down to receiving associate's degrees. And the problem we're running into with that is we train our staff, we get them all certified and qualified, and then we lose them. We lose them to the government. They end up working for DOE. We have to start all over again. You know, start training our staff back up again. That's very frustrating to us, to sit there and work and train and get all of our staff members up and really working, and we got good people, but we cannot compete with the standards that or the quality or whatever the benefits that the government has. I have a staff that's now working for the Anderson Air Force Base because federal government pays a lot better than we do, So she's working up there for that daycare after she got her degree. I have one that turned around, went out, ended up becoming a vice principal for one of the local schools. It's difficult when you have to face these things, Supplies, utility, all increased along with that. And this GRT exemption has helped us to survive, just to stay afloat. And that was what I testified last time, that should that GRT exemption be implemented, it would help me to survive and to float instead of closing my doors like some of my other colleagues did. And it has. And again, I'm humbly asking you for your support in this bill. And in order for us to continue our quality care for our children of Guam, I mean, these children are the most important resource that we have on Guam. They're our future. And for us to continue with the quality that we have now, I'm begging you guys to continue. Put that back in. Continue. As a matter of fact, why 5 years? Just erase it completely. Let's invest in our children forever. Don't just go 5 years at a time, because the standards are not just 5 years at a time. The standards have been put into place forever. You will, as a daycare center, provide good standards for everybody, for all these children forever. So exempt us forever. Let us take care of these kids. Why are we going to come back to the table every 5 years? The standards don't end every 5 years, right? They continue. Ultimately, who's going to pay for it? The parents. Ultimately, the parents. And right now, our average tuition rate here on Guam is way cheaper than it is in the States. Our standards are just as high, if not higher, than a lot of the mainland, a lot of centers in the mainland. Our standards are really good. Sirs, ma'ams, that's all I have to say. I just ask you, continue taking care of our kids, and let us continue taking care of our kids. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carla Nicolas. I'm currently the president of Guam Child Daycare and Development Association. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Senator Rodriguez, for bringing this up. On behalf of all the 44 daycares here in Guam, we're just humbly asking your support to please continue the GRT exemption to help all the daycares, home cares, and group cares here in Guam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nicolas. I did have a couple questions. I listened very intently, Mr. Huffer, I'm sorry I'm saying that correctly, to your testimony about the impact of the taxes on the quality of care that you're able to provide to your customers. Why are you guys even operating as for-profit entities then? I mean, wouldn't the nonprofit status be the best route to go so that you can exempt yourselves from the tax basis almost entirely? I mean, and the reason why I'm asking is because perhaps I mean, I can understand why the exemption would probably be something to consider, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I mean, maybe you guys should all reconsider the tax status of your entire entity. I mean, to be a for-profit entity would probably be a good thing to do if you're looking at banking revenue for the purposes of investing in different enterprises or growing the enterprise. But if what you're sharing is that the business environment is such where even the 4% GRT is going to make or break an operation, I think the tax-exempt status would be most attractive for most of you, especially because you're talking about retaining the income in the form of a salary for a lot of you. You can pay yourselves almost any kind of a salary you'd like as a nonprofit operation. So that's something to probably reconsider for the entire organization, to not just exempt just the GRT, but you can exempt almost all of your taxes as a nonprofit operation. So maybe we'll work with Senator Rodriguez and get a roundtable together also with Rev and Tax to talk with them about how you guys can probably reclassify your business models into nonprofits.
Yes.
Aside from that, the thing that I was particularly taken aback by with the bill was the way I read the original language was it provides you with a business privilege tax exemption for the first 5 years of operation. And then after the first 5 years, that business privilege tax exemption goes away.
Yes.
And so the way I was originally reading the language of the law was that it's supposed to provide almost like a startup exemption.
Right.
So when the business gets started, you don't have to worry about paying GRT until after 5 years. If we do this amendment, everybody who's operating already will be able to continue with the GRT exemption, but after 2021, all of the exemptions go away, even for those businesses that are just getting started. So we wouldn't be able to give a startup exemption anymore because it all would sunset in 2021. So what I'll do is I'll work with the author. We'll probably figure out if he wants to tweak the language somehow for us to be able to provide an exemption for the existing enterprises that you can incorporate the changes on the regulations, but also keep the door open for the new businesses that might want to open up. I mean, especially when we have a population boom coming with the buildup, we're going to want to create as much of a business-friendly environment for these centers as possible. But that being said, I mean, I would still like to explore the roundtable discussion of Rev and Tax, at least so that you guys can have all the information in front of you with respect to how you might want to consider restructuring to address the overall tax question, because you don't just pay, GRT, you pay income tax, corporate tax, all those other things that you might be paying. So we'll definitely work on that with the committee and with the sponsor of the legislation. Did any of my other colleagues have any questions for Senator Uggan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to commend the sponsor for introducing this legislation and at least allowing for an additional 5 years to be considered. I like, Mr. Huffer, I really appreciate your perspective in terms of making it an indefinite allocation or provision. And then the chairman came up with that tax exempt status, and I think that's also an excellent way to go in terms of making sure that you continue to provide these critical services to our community, and in the same token, are not required to remit taxes to the government of Guam on behalf of that particular tax exempt status organization. It goes back to Mr. Soriano about your key phrase, investment by the people of Guam, and you're absolutely right. Because by foregoing collection of taxes that otherwise could go to other areas in the community, the critical services that you're providing, the people of Guam are investing by virtue of not taxing your organizations, and I certainly agree with that. And it's consistent with what this legislative body has done in the last 2 years, inclusive of the governor advocating for pre-K schooling in our public schools. And as an advocate for daycare centers, all 4 of my children, we were very fortunate enough to allow our children to go through that process, and we saw the stark difference in terms of the development of my children. So from a personal perspective, I certainly have an appreciation for the services that all of our daycare centers provide, and I agree with you that in this particular case, if you're providing critical daycare services to our children, and you're giving them an environment where they can grow up and spend a little bit of time with other infants and other children and develop some of their initial skills in terms of communicating. I think that's a tremendous service that you're providing our community, and this investment is well worth it. So I appreciate all the testimonies that you provided this morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Uggan. We have Senator Underwood and then Senator Torres. Senator Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, too, echo the comments of Senator Uggan regarding the importance of the service that you provide to our families. I understand that we have children that are under your care that are actually subsidized by block grants for those parents who otherwise would not be able to afford.
Right.
So that's also very important. But as an educator by profession and also as a parent, I just know the importance of and the tremendous responsibility that all of you hold in shaping the minds and the hearts of our kids. You are actually the parents of those children for most of the time. For those full-time parents, those are working full-time or even part-time. So I know the burden that you carry, and I have always said that I had 3 children, and keeping track of all 3 children was already a handful for me, and much more for you. When you have to take care, even though you're being paid, but you have the responsibility of taking care of other people's children, and so that really is it's just very important. Not only important, but it does help shape how our community will be. We are in the process of piloting the preschool program. And so I am just wondering how many of the daycares right now are providing preschool services. Do you have an idea? Like for the 4-year-olds?
I think just about every
Everybody,
center.
yes.
I mean the pre-K.
Ma'am,
Everybody's
ma'am, the way we
providing
look
that.
at it, right, with the raising of the standards that we did several years back, I cannot speak for the rest of the centers, but I'm pretty sure they're right on the same playing field with me. Our center, we take a loss when we watch infants. That's below 1-year-old. And I mentioned that briefly earlier, where we have 4 children, but we have to have 2 staff to cover that 4 children for the day. Those 4 children, their parents, or their tuition does not cover 2 staff's payroll for the month. So we take a loss when you have infants. That's below 12 months of age.
Okay.
With the 1-year-olds, it's a 6-to-1 ratio. With that, you break even with the 1-year-olds. Those 6 children can pay the 2 staff, possibly, depending on the length of time of the staff and their salary. But you still have that loss from your infants. Now we come into the preschoolers, your 3s and 4s. This is where you're going to be able to cover your loss for your infants, plus pay your taxes, pay your supplies, pay your utilities, pay your rental, pay for everything else. And then that's where you might make a little bit of profit. So it's in the preschoolers where you make up for your losses in your infants and toddlers. With the opening of the Universal Preschool Program, that's going to affect the centers very, very tremendously. We will be devastated with that. When you open that, when you open up those preschools, you take away our preschoolers, all we have are infants and toddlers. We take a loss with infants, we break even with toddlers. You're going to see, I'm just saying this from me. I don't have any statistics or proof, but I can imagine centers closing down. They will not be able to survive. Just with the standards raising out, we've lost about 1/3 of our centers already.
All right. Okay, so I understand that, but this is a pilot program, so there are only 4. So there are only 4 centers, and part of the study is really the economic impact that it would have if it were to expand on those of you who are providing child care.
Yes.
And so that would be, just to let you know, that is part of the study. That's part of what will be brought back to us before that is actually expanded. We have to collect the information, collect data about the effectiveness of the program, and not only the impact to the children themselves, but also the overall economic impact of the public schools providing that. So I hear your concern, and we have heard that as well. But this is something that is at a pilot. There are 4 classrooms. So I just want to let you know that we certainly are giving that some thought. Okay.
Let me add to that also, your comment and your question. We lost 1 child, 2 kids actually. They're 4-year-olds.
If you could just bring the mic a little closer, because we do transcribe all of the...
Hello?
Yeah.
I just want to add to that comment and also the comments of Mr. Huffer. We've lost 1 or 2. We have some 4-year-olds, and so forth. And some of them do go to Head Start. Some of them go to Kinder. Our preschool program in our centers are not to the level of we're paying high salaries, but we work towards a curriculum that teaches the kids and prepare them for the first grade and second grade and what have you, to succeed in school. So, we have our way of teaching, and we have a curriculum in place, basically in our center, and I presume all the other centers that I think they share the same thing. And we do teach the kids. We have lost one or two, and I congratulate them. Go to, to this, what is this, universal pre-K, because it was open, and they were waiting. The parent was waiting for that. But it's passion, regardless whether the door is closing a little bit in the number of kids we have. It's passion to teach our kids, regardless whether it's government funded or for profit organizations like us or non-profit organization. I understand that just closes, as Mr. Huffer says, the age group that we'll be able to accept. If the universal learning works, the more for the kids, the more for the parents. But it's something that we need your help in terms of, in the form of a GRT exemption or some subsidy or what have you, to care for the kids that we have in our center. And I mean, the birth on Guam is pretty high, so we're getting, we're the first teachers of most of the kids that go to school, and we want to continue that. But we need your help to continue with our own programs and our own passion, and that's to make every child learn and not leave them behind. But if your program works, I guess it's the merrier for everyone. But we just need your help as well. All right?
May I, sir?
Sure.
In what he was saying as far as the curriculum is concerned, the government is also piloting. The QRIS program, which involves the ECHRs and the ITERs, which is a rating system for daycare centers and for children in their quality of care that we have, not just in curriculum and in teaching, but also in environment, in professional development. There's a star rating system that's being piloted also at the same time. Should we end up losing our preschoolers, we might as well take ECHRs and throw ECHRs out the door, right? No sense in running that piloting program, because you're running two piloting programs right now as the government. You're piloting the universal pre-K system, and you're also piloting your QRIS for centers to have good quality of care for your preschoolers under the ECHRs program. So why are we doing both sides? Okay, that's cool, you want to do that, but choose the better of the two, then that'll be fine, I guess, but it will affect us. I just wanted to say you got two pilotings going on at the same time.
On regards of Senator Underwood's question, how many pre-K we have? Most of the centers service from 0 to 12 years old, means we care after school program as well during the vacation break and also during holidays. We do have like 18 in the classroom, and maybe half or all of that will go to pre-K if the standard pass. And most of the daycares do take pre-K because we service from 0 to 12 as my center. Some daycare do the same thing. So we will lose out a lot of pre-K when the pre-K start in public school. So it just, he just said that we might close a lot of centers.
Just something to explore also, though, because I mentioned the nonprofit model.
Mm-hmm.
You might also want to consider creating a charter school model within your establishments for specifically for the pre-K, because since it's provided by the department, and the department does authorize a charter school to be established. Part of what you may consider is establishing a charter school model within your own pre-K to be able to receive pre-K students now, since the department's providing it as a service. And I'll go ahead and refer you to Senator Underwood. She can give you the whole rundown on how the charter school model works. But basically, you do get paid per student
Yes.
At the same rate that DOE would be paying per student within their own universal pre-K program. So it may actually be a business opportunity for the
We looked at
the
that,
establishment.
Sir. We did look at that, sir, but what the problem we were running into with that was coming up with the standards. Which standards are we going to follow so that they are the same standards that the government is following, the pre-K, same as we are following?
Right.
They have to be the same standards.
So not to deviate too much from the bill, though, because I want to keep us focused. What I will do is I'll just kind of leave it at that, so that I can have Senator Underwood kind of take the ball and run with it for you guys.
Okay.
But I do have Miss
Okay.
I would like to say something. My name is Sabina Tamondong. I am the owner and director of ABC Children's Center. I am here to testify or to support Bill 224 extending exemption of GRT for several reasons, but it seems that Mr. Hopper already mentioned the reasons. And I just want to acknowledge Senator Underwood that please include us because you are still piloting the pre-K, 4 years old and above. Well, of course, there is a lot of impact of the public school taking these kids. Number one is for the benefit of the parents. The parents will, because in the public school, the children will stay only 4 hours or 5 hours?
Until 12.
Until 12. The parents will go and pick up their kids, especially those who are receiving block grant, and they will come and put it back to our child care. That alone is very problematic on the part of the parents to pick up their child, bring it back to the child care. And here we are, the child care, we are open from 7 to 6 o'clock the whole day. And yes, please include us in the pilot program so that we might be able to give you some input on how we in the child care industry be able to work hand in hand with the public school. We are not telling you that we are better. Child care providers, you must remember that professionally, I'm a retired teacher at JFK. It is much harder to be certified to be a director now than to be certified as a public school teacher. I was so embarrassed, but I don't be, or was so mad when I put in when I was renewing my license. I was not even qualified to be a director. Why am I not being qualified to be a director in a child care? Well, I cannot be mad at these people who are evaluating my transcript because they were my students long time ago. For the record, I've been in the child care business for 32 years old. For 32 years. It's easy to remember because when I gave birth to my youngest son, I put up a child care. I needed it. And as my child care providers mentioned, putting up a child care is just like a passion. It is a passion. Cash flow, you mentioned about why will you not think of being chartered or being on a non-profit sector. The non-profit, it's not an option because there are qualifications to go into a non-profit organization. Chartered, I do not know. I am not very familiar with chartered school, but that is a good option. But we are very much helpful when you are going to talk about the pilot program offering offering services to 4-year-old to be incorporated or enclosed in the public school, yes, we have a lot of input on that. And as I said, it might be cheaper on the part of the government for us to offer this kind of services than the public school. We have a better facilities. We are more qualified. We are on what you call that? What's that? Develop the word. No. Developmentally, we are qualified to do that. Much more qualified than any classroom teacher in the public school, because that is where we excel. That is where we go. We are being trained. In the public school, you are going to the university or to GCC for a refresher course. In the child care center, no. You are going to finish a certain number of hours to take those early childhood education. Not to mention the director, not to mention the assistant director, but all our staff are required to do that before they are being classified as a caregiver, assistant caregiver, or a head teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mondong. I know Senator Torres did have a... Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much. I think you've brought up a lot of points that we could use for other discussions, right? I think, Mrs. Tamondong, you said it very very eloquently as well. This idea, well, first of all, to make it clear, this measure, even when we did it the first time, wasn't just for startup. It was for those who are already providing, who are already daycare providers, to receive this exemption, right? And so it continued, and what this would do too, if passed, would continue that. Not just if you're a startup, but even for the existing operators. This would give you that exemption moving forward. You know, and I just want to bring up, because the idea of perhaps transitioning your folks into a nonprofit is not really as easy. If anything, it's going to put you on equal footing as the other private schools now, who have been chartered as nonprofits. You know, they were chartered as nonprofits based out of most of them out of faith-based you know, organizations, right? And they're exempt from taxes. And so we understand that at least for the 40 plus of you, it's individual. You are all individual operators, and transitioning into a nonprofit really, I think, is not very easy, and it may be problematic. But that's a discussion that we'll support and talk about and engage in. But we'll make sure we watch this very closely as the time approaches to ensure that it's passed before the November deadline of the existing law. So again, I want to thank you all for the service you provide to our children, our community, and thank you for being here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and conclude the hearing on Bill 224-33, and we'll notify the Guam Child Care and Development Association when we're going to be having the roundtable to discuss the items that were brought up today in the hearing. Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we do have Bills 232-33, and according to the prime sponsor, he would also like to go ahead and merge his opening statement on Bill 232 and Bill 233, as both of these are interrelated with respect to the laws governing scrap metal operations and the sale of scrap metal. So, Senator McCready, at your request, your opening statement will go ahead and cover both Bill 232 and Bill 233, and we'll go ahead and entertain any testimony for both bills in a single sitting. Senator McCready?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the allowing me to combine both bills. They're basically simple bills, and I'll make this opening statement really quick because I don't see anyone in the public hearing room to testify in support or opposition. First bill would impose a fine of $100,000 and a permanent revocation of your business license when you're caught buying stolen copper wire. And then the Bill 233, which was the second one, which would just require officials to certify who is actually selling the copper wire and if the copper wire indeed was not stolen. So, I just want to just give you, Mr. Chairman, a few numbers that has been researched by my staff to indicate that we do have a real problem. First of all, we have 152 cases in the last 3 years that deal with copper wire theft. And that copper wire theft is roughly $352,000 worth of copper wire in 3 years. You see, in 2014, we had 82 instances. In 2013, 23. And then it dropped in 2015. From my sources and the experts, they say the reason why the drop is because there's no more copper wire to steal. They stole it all. So you see the instance of the Tietzen baseball field that was renovated, and we paid all that money to get the renovation, but the copper wire thieves were waiting because that was an opportunity to steal the newest copper wire on Guam, and they actually did that, and they succeeded, and that cost the government $50,000. So my intention for this bill, Mr. Chairman, is to eliminate that number. Eliminate the 47 copper wire thefts, which coincidentally, 2 of the highest instances of copper wire theft occurred in 2015, which was 13 in April, and then in 2014 we had a total of 18 in August. Those were the 2 highest incidents we had on Guam in those particular months. So I hope that the committee and my colleagues can support this and end this this crime that actually, if you look at it, has 3 components to it. 1, you steal the copper wire. 2, you sell stolen copper wire, and then you buy it. That's also a crime. And then the third, and I think the most important aspect of this crime, I actually think they're all important, but the third one is what they do with the final product after they bought the copper wire, and that's probably leaving island, going somewhere else, and exponentially making more money off of Guam. So, which is all a crime. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak, and I hope we get some support.
Thank you, Senator McCready. As of this time, we do not have any individuals who signed up to testify. Senator McCready, was this a time-sensitive legislation, or did you want to move? Did you want to move this in the February session, or are you okay with moving it on the March session?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair. Whatever you
Since we don't have anyone here to testify, I'll go ahead and leave the written testimony dates open, and we'll hear it on the March session. That way, we just give the community a little bit more time, since it's not particular time sensitive. And so that will go ahead and conclude the public hearings then on Bill 232 and Bill 233, and that will exhaust all the items on the agenda. Just to recap how the committee is going to handle these items, Bill 221. We will be having a roundtable discussion with Senator Frank Uggan on that matter. Bill 224, the exemptions don't expire till November as stated by the prime sponsor, so we'll go ahead and have the roundtable also on that item with respect to the nonprofit questions and some of the items that were brought up in terms of the compliance with charter schools and help them get options. For Bill 232 and 233, we'll leave the record open for at least 10 working days, and we will be reporting it out thereafter for the availability for the March session at the discretion of the author if he chooses to move it forward. Bill 248, we're going to go ahead and leave the record open for the next 2 working days and try and get this on the session for the February session, and we will work expeditiously with the prime sponsor, seeing that we have some expectant mothers who may be interested in this legislation, and we will have the nomination of Mr. Cotton on the February session. That will go ahead and conclude all the items on the agenda, and we'll adjourn the committee at 11:23 this morning. Thank you all very much for your time and attendance.